Hey guys, it's Cornell Jermaine here. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of the Build on Beauty podcast. Listen, this particular episode is an anniversary edition for those who have been following us since the beginning. This marks our 5th year doing a podcast, our 5th year as a podcast. Listen, I remember 5 years ago having this idea, this vision of doing a podcast, and I tell you, I've learned so much along the way. So I decided to bring some of my favorite podcasters and myself to the table in order to just share some information with you guys. I realize in this season, there are so many who are interested and have started their own podcast, and kudos to you guys. This is a great opportunity for you to lend your voice to a cause, a movement, to facilitate change with your voice, with your thoughts, with your perspective. So it's an awesome opportunity. But I also realized, like me and so many others, when you started, you had no idea what you were doing. You didn't know how to do it, what to do. And when I started, podcasts were fairly new, thing people weren't doing it. There were a few major thought leaders, authors, and a couple of maybe major corporations that were doing podcasts at the time, but it was a really new concept that most people had not heard about. So I stepped into uncharted waters, if you will, knowing absolutely nothing. So I want to just share what I've learned. I got some special guests that are going to join me and share just a couple of ideas as to what they wish they had known when they started. And hopefully at the end of this episode, if you're looking to start a podcast, you will have a little bit more knowledge on where to start or how to navigate it based on the wisdom that we will share here today. So thank you so much for joining me. It's the Build on Beauty podcast, and we are here today with What I Wish I Knew Before Starting a Podcast.
Welcome to the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. Now, here's your host, author, speaker, entrepreneur, Cornell Jermaine.
Hey guys, welcome again. This is the Build on Beauty podcast. Listen, I want to share how I even got into this podcasting thing. Listen, I have to go back to the beginning, which is my tenure in radio. It was and is, because I still do it today, an amazing experience. And how I landed that was a lady from my church. I was 16 years old, and she came to me out of the clear blue. Didn't have any idea that she even thought I was good at this, but she came to me and told me that she had heard of an opportunity where a very popular radio personality in the city was looking for a couple of youth to accompany her on her show for a special episode that she was working on. So she said, I think you should apply. She's looking for 2 people, but I think you should submit. I think you'll be good. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I did it, because I'm always like up for the challenge, like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I applied. She accepted me, and she was looking for it. She's like, do you know any young ladies? I want to, have a male and female voice to weigh in. So I said, well, I got my cousin. I called my cousin, and it's funny. I think if she knew, I think she forgot all about this. And if she listens to this, she's gonna crack up because I know she does not remember this. That's how long ago this was. But we were 16. I was about 16, and she was probably about 14 or 15. And we went and we did the show. It was amazing. And from our vantage point, it was a one and done type situation. We come in, do the show, and we go home and, say, hey, we had a good time. Well, come to find out, the host loved us. The audience responded so well to the point where she wanted us to continue to come back every week. So I think I did that run for months before I actually moved on and did something else. My cousin fell off after about a couple of weeks. She didn't keep it up, but it wasn't her thing, But whatever happened, she stopped coming, but I continued to do it. And it was something that really opened up my eyes to see the gift that I had when it came to radio, media, speaking, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know that I was good at that, but I fell in love with it, And for those who are in radio, it's something about the microphone and the switchboards and the briefings and all of the stuff that you have when you go into the radio station. It's something about when you sit in that chair in front of that mic and your voice goes into the land of millions of people to weigh in on subjects and or to just have a good time and talk about things that are going on in the culture of the community or what have you. It's something about that just brings life to you. And to this day, it just does something to me. It does something even different from what it does for me with the podcast. You know, the podcast has its space, and I love that work as well. And it's similar, but radio is a whole nother beast. And I think it's the timing of it. See, a podcast, you can sit and you can develop your show and you can record it whenever you want and you can do it how you want. Radio, you're subject to the producers, the timing. You're in this room with all this energy, you know, because what you don't see in radio land is there's a lot going on in the booth at the radio stations. You know, you got producers yelling at you saying you only got 30 seconds. You got timers going off. You got other people saying, hey, we got to hit this topic. You got guests waiting in the lobby because you got to interview them. It's so much. It's a beautiful, complicated, hectic but amazing dance that you're doing for however length the show. You know, the show that I do currently with one of the best, and who's my media mother. I love her to life. That show runs 2 hours. You know, I don't typically sit the whole 2 hours, but when I host or co-host or sit in for her, I am there, you know, the entire time, which is a 2 hour run. It used to be 4 hours. So just imagine sitting at a mic in a chair for 4 hours, having to engage an audience. It is not as easy as it sounds. 4 hours. Many of us can't come up with something to talk about for 5 minutes. We're talking about a 4 hour time span where you have to talk. And you have to have something to say that will keep people from changing the radio dial. That is not an easy feat. So I realized how I guess good I was at painting pictures with my words, which is what you do as a radio personality or a radio DJ. You have to be able to convey what it is that you want to say in a way that people can visually see what it is that you're trying to tell them without actually seeing you or what the gestures, because you don't have gestures. You don't have body language. You don't have facial expressions, which are all forms of communication that help people gather what it is that you're saying. You know what I mean? You don't have that in radio. You only have your voice. And if you can't do it with your voice, it can't be done. So that is such an amazing thing. So that's how I started. So I started in that, and one day I said, well, I don't have my own show. I still do, sit in on shows with people, and I love that, and I'll continue to do that. But I said, what can I do that's my own and that can really develop this brand that I already have? See, I have a 20 plus year actually now background in the beauty industry. So from many people's vantage point, I'm an expert. You know what I mean? I just do what I do, but they call me an expert, so I'll take it. You know, they just have to pay me like an expert, which is a whole other topic. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time. But I'm an expert in that field. So I said, well, I've done this, and in beauty, we know beauty is a $1 trillion business. I was going to say billion, but it's $1 trillion business. And that's just on the retail product manufacturing side. We're not even talking about the service side of the industry. Women particularly spend a lot of money in beauty. Beautiful. We love it. But I felt that there was a void. I felt that there was something that I could lend to the industry that had not been done before. And that's where this podcast called the Build on Beauty Podcast was birthed. It was birthed out of what I felt was a need to contribute something more substantial, something beyond brows, bundles, and booty, if you will. You know what I mean? I wanted to take them past that and help women to see their excellence, to see their brilliance, to see their contribution, the real contribution that they have to offer the world. You know, so that's how the Build on Beauty Podcast was birthed. But it morphed into more than just this inspirational show to help women discover their purpose and find their lane and develop their skill sets or whatever. It's turned into more than that, to where now it's not just women listening, there are men who listen, you know, and it's not just beauty, or it's not really beauty at all when you think of the content. If you've been following the show, it's not a beauty show. It's in the sense of the word, where you're talking about aesthetics, you know. It's not, oh, we're going to teach you how to properly arch your brows, or we're going to teach you how to perfectly line your lips. No, we're going to teach you how to tap into the inner man so that you can birth the beauty that God has given you on the inside. So that's when it comes to the build on beauty, that's what we're talking about. So we're actually saying it's a metaphor for saying, essentially we're going to help you build on, you have this idea of beauty, but we're going to help you build on that and let you see that beauty is more than just this. It's more than just that, so that's where the whole concept set came up. So I have been enjoying it, but now we're at a 5-year point, which has flown by. And now we're at a point in life or in our culture where podcasts are highly sought after. People are listening to them all around the world. Individuals are looking to start their own. It's become very popular, which at the time I started, it was not. There were very few. People didn't even know what the concept meant. You said podcast and they were confused, but now it's a point where people know what they are. They listen to them, and many want to start their own, which is amazing, because it is an opportunity to lend your voice to a cause. It's an opportunity to share your thoughts on an issue. It's a great opportunity to inspire and to help people and just have fun and entertain. It doesn't always have to be deep and heavy. You can do whatever you want with the podcast, but it's a great opportunity for individuals. But many are in a place where they don't understand. They don't know how to get started. It's still, even though it's popular for people to listen, it's still something that people really don't understand. How do they do it? Where do they do it? How do they make it happen? Well, today I brought together some of my favorite podcasters who are amazing to me for so many reasons. But I brought them together to share what they wish they knew before starting their podcast. Well, I can speak for myself, and I'll dip in and out here and there to share what I wish I knew. One thing I wish I knew just starting out, I wish I knew that I didn't have to be techie. I didn't have to be an engineer, if you will, to do a successful and professional podcast. When I started out in my podcast, I bought thousands of dollars worth of equipment, because I felt like this is what I had to do. I was familiar with radio, and I knew all the equipment that's used in radio. And I said, well, this is obviously what I need to do a podcast, because this is what they use in the radio show. They use this in the studio. So I'm guessing this is what I need. So I bought mixers, microphones. I still have all of that stuff today. And guess what? It's in a box, dusty. I'm not throwing it away, because one day I'm going to put it to use, but it's in a box, dusty. And I mean, microphone, that's $300. You know what I mean? So it's not a thing where you have to know how to engineer. You don't have to be this technical person to do a popular or successful or professional, I should say, podcast. So I wish I knew that, because I spent a lot of time first trying to figure it out. I've spent a lot of time studying this and researching that and trying to figure out, okay, what do I need, or what's the best mixer to buy, or what's the best microphone to have, or how should what do I need to pad the room like what they have in the studio? I spent a lot of time trying to figure the technical aspect of it out, and I wasted a lot of time doing that, not knowing, and actually I didn't realize it until probably 2 years in, that I didn't have to have that stuff to have a professional sounding podcast. So I did that for a long time, and then I went and bought the equipment, and got the equipment, happy, excited, opened up boxes. I got cords everywhere. It's knobs on everything. It's all these little pieces, and I have no idea how to put them together. So I spent another couple of months trying to play with it, put it together. And by the time I got it together to where it was at least functioning, I had to play with it to get the sound right. And I was exhausted. And in between that, I had to take a break, because it was just so overwhelming trying to figure this stuff out on my own. So I took a break. So I spent probably 6 to 8 months just trying to figure it out before I even launched out on the podcast. You know what I mean? And had I known what I know now, I would not have done that. I would have simply got a recorder, which is what I ended up using. I got a very high-end recorder, and for the interviews that I could go in person and do, I would do it on the recorder, which bounced down as an MP3 file, which it was easy for me to edit. I would have realized that I didn't need all that stuff and just got me a USB microphone, which is what I use today. You know what I mean? Which simply plugs right into my laptop and sets on my microphone. I didn't have to have a mix. When I tell you, if I'd known that, we would have been celebrating probably the 5th year anniversary last year because I would have probably been a whole year ahead. But that was a learning curve for me now to be able to tell you new podcasters that you don't have to have all of that to get started. It's great to have if you know what you're doing, but you'll waste a lot of time trying to figure it out because that technical stuff, when it comes to engineering, listen, I do radio. I'm into music. So I've been in booths and around sound and audio equipment for years, for my entire life. And it is not something easy to figure out. Even to this day, as much as I'm in a studio, I still only know how to push power and sit in front of the microphone. The producer has to do everything else. Otherwise, I'm going to be lost. And that's okay. Because guess what? That producer is going to do what they do, or that engineer is going to do what they do. And I, the personality or the talk show host, am going to sit and do what I do, but until you get to that place where you have an engineer or someone to produce you, listen, keep it simple, silly. KISS, keep it simple, silly. Get you a good MP3 formatting recorder. They have many of them out there. Find the guest that you want to talk to, or just if it's a show just for you by yourself, come up with your topic matters, whatever you're going to do, and just go for it. That's something that I wish I had known before starting my podcast. And it may seem minimal to some, but it is such an important piece of the puzzle, because you'd be surprised how many people have had the idea or wanted to start a podcast and have not, because they can't figure out, or they just have gotten fearful because they were like, I don't know how to do all that stuff, and they have not done it. Listen, you can do it. I did it. So many others are doing it, and you can do it too. Up first, though, I wanted to bring in some amazing people that I think can give you just a little insight on what they wish they knew before starting their podcast. And the first one is a guy who he's such a dope guy. He's out of Canada, and he has a dope show called Project Passion. His name is Ben Levitt. I contacted Ben when we started working on this episode, and I said, hey Ben, I want you to come and share what you do and give our listening audience some idea of what you wish you knew, just one thing or a couple of things, whatever, what you wish you knew before starting your podcast. And Ben was like, yes, I'm in. I got you, no problem. Immediately he got back with me, and here is what he had to say.
Hi there, my name is Ben Levitt. I'm the host of Project Passion. What I wish I knew before starting my podcast was to really think about why I was starting the show, and not even for so much of a content perspective, but internally. What was the reason I was doing this? I think if you're able to answer that question with a strong sense of purpose and a reason behind that why, everything becomes a lot easier. Finding guests if your show is an interview style show, remaining consistent if it's independent or an interview style show, everything becomes substantially easier when you have that strong sense of purpose and that bank of why. And I encourage people to dig deeper than it just being money or an escape from their current job or situation, because that's not going to be strong enough to remain consistent. It's an incredibly competitive field, and increasingly more so every single day. So I think that your unique and unfair advantage is going to be a strong why. So that's what I wish I knew before I started my show, and something that I would encourage anyone to invest some time into really digging deep into before they start their own.
So good. So good. Ben Levitt, Project Passion. My guy, listen, that is... he put it so plainly, and it is so true. You have to come to a sense of why. Why am I doing this show? There are so many people, and I think we've probably all been guilty on some level, who jump into ventures just because it's the fad, or just because it's the, it's popular, or it's a way to get a little change, or you know what I mean, or establish your name in this sector of the industry, or whatever. So many people do that, and you find out once you get in that that's not enough to last. Like Ben said, it's not enough just to be money driven, because even though the money comes, if the passion and purpose are not intact, you're not going to have any staying power. And it is so necessary in this particular industry of the podcast, because podcasting is a very demanding field of work. And if anyone has even attempted to do it, you know exactly how demanding it is. Now, keep in mind, when I started, there weren't you didn't have podcast studios and all that kind of stuff that you can go. There wasn't any of that. Today, it is a little different. You do have studios where you can go and you can kind of do away with the engineering issue. You know what I mean? Because they have engineers on staff. You pay them and they engineer your show. You just sit down and do everything else. But just to get on the mic and talk, there has to be some sense of purpose, some sense of passion behind it, because you have to keep that audience engaged every week, every day, however frequently you release your show. And that is not an easy task. As I mentioned about my radio career, it's the same thing, and people think because they have an opinion, because social media has given us this platform where everybody has an opinion, everybody has a voice, and good, great, amazing. I love it. However, everybody does not have the skill set to keep people's attention. Everybody does not have the skill set to communicate a thought. Keep in mind, talk to some people and really listen. Everybody doesn't have the skill set to communicate, and you have to communicate on a podcast. You know what I mean? Everybody doesn't have the skill set to do effective and thought-provoking, interesting interviews. That is something else. We've seen, where everybody now is a talk show host, and everybody wants to interview everybody. It's a great thing. It's a great stab at it if you can do it. I'm not knocking anybody who's doing it. All I'm saying is to be effective at it, and to be able to last and have a show that is last 5 years or more. You have to have purpose behind it, not only, but you have to have some skill and some skin in the game to be able to do it. And it is not as easy as it seems. So if you step out into doing this podcast thing and you don't have a sense of purpose, your only passion is making some money, that's all to it, it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to stick with, because once you get things rolling, that it's like an avalanche. That thing keeps running and running and running and running, and you have to keep up with it. And if the passion isn't there, if the purpose isn't there, it's going to be very challenging. I don't care how much money you make at it. So I thank you, Ben. I appreciate his thoughts on that. That is so important and so necessary to note. Center yourself. If you're thinking about doing it and you want to do it, don't not do it, but first take some time to think about what you want to do, what you want to say. You want to lend your voice, but what role does your voice play in the market? All of those things, all of those questions are necessary in order to have a successful podcast. And it's something that you should think about at the beginning, not in the middle after you've started and gotten things going. And now you're at the place where you're exhausted, frustrated, and you want to give up because no sense of purpose is there now. You know what I mean? Now you're trying to find out, okay, well, what does this all mean? Do that at the beginning, and I think it'll make your journey much more successful. Listen, next up, we have a young lady who is so interesting to me, Debbie Arcangeles, and she is the host of the Offbeat Life, but she also is what she's coined herself, the Offbeat Trekker, which is she lives a life of adventure, and she pretty much just shows you how to make a living and live successfully, might I add, traveling the world. She is a travel blogger, and she takes you on her adventures, and she has been on many, many adventures. And I thought she would be an interesting voice to lend to this matter, not only because she's a successful podcaster, but because but because she does it in an interesting way. You know, she's not in a studio working with the same engineer every week, and you know, all the consistent things that some other podcasters have. She's in the air, flying from country to country and going around the world, and still able to maintain a successful show even in spite of that. And it has made it even more successful, if I might add, because many people are interested. You know, they want to see what's going on in Brazil or Bali or Indonesia, wherever she may be. So she is such a awesome young lady, and I think you will enjoy her podcast. So definitely check it out, The Offbeat Life. But here's what she had to say on the question of what I wish I knew before starting a podcast. Debbie Arcangelis.
Hey everyone, my name is Debbie and I am the host of the Offbeat Life podcast. It's where I interview individuals who are remote workers and remote entrepreneurs. What I wish I knew before starting my podcast is to first, how to use my equipment properly. When I first started, and I'm sure like most of you, I did not know how to use it properly, so my audio quality was not very good, and I'm sure I lost a lot of listeners the first few seconds when they came in to check out my episode. So that's the one thing I wish I had really learned a lot sooner. If you had to scroll down the very beginning of my podcast, even way before maybe like 50 episodes, it was pretty bad, I think. So definitely I wish I had done that. Another thing is that marketing is extremely crucial to your growth. Now, a lot of people just put out an episode and they don't know why they're not getting the audience. If you just want this as a hobby, that's fine. You know, your parents, your friends and family are listening to it. But if you want to make this last and you want to make this into an actual business and turn this from a hobby to profitable business, you really have to take the time and put the effort in order to start marketing correctly. You know, you have to really figure out what works for you and for your podcast. Everyone's podcast is different, so yours could be maybe sharing on Facebook groups, putting it on Instagram, even TikTok, sharing it on Reddit groups, anything like that. You just have to start experimenting and making sure that you're doing it the right way. Now, I would say that don't pay any money yet to start marketing. Start doing it organically and it'll go from there. Another thing that I wish I knew is that the community you're going to be building will be super crucial to your success. It's really amazing what podcasting can do for you, for your career, and for your business, especially if you are interviewing a lot of experts in your field. You're going to be learning so much. I mean, for me specifically, when I first started my podcast, it really wasn't to build a business. It was for me to learn how to be a digital nomad, how to take my business on the road, or even be a freelance entrepreneur, a remote worker, all of those things. And I learned all of that from all of the interviews that I did on my podcast. And most of the people that I have interviewed have become friends, or I have done collaborations with them. So this is extremely crucial. So make sure that you keep those relationships close, because you don't know what's going to happen afterwards, right? So podcasting is a lot of fun, and especially if you're going to make this into your business, take it seriously. Like with anything else, make it into a crucial part of your business, because it will become that. And you will see more and more. I believe it's 1 out of 4 people are listening to podcasts. So it's just going to keep growing and growing. So if you want to start a podcast, this is the time to do it. And I am so excited if you are interested in doing it, because there's a lot of opportunities for you to build in. Well, thank you guys so much for allowing me to share my experiences and what I wish I knew before starting my podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to theoffbeatlife.com/buildonbeauty, and I will give you guys a podcasting freebie there. And say hello to me on Instagram. I'm there as well at The Offbeat Life, and I give a lot of tips on how to start, grow, and monetize your own show. So I can't wait to hear from all of you. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Debbie from the offbeatlife.com. Definitely check out the offer that she has for you guys. I think it's going to be so amazing for you. If you're starting out new, it's going to be a great guide to help you navigate this process. But she had so much amazing content to share as it pertains to starting out. First, she talked about the equipment, which we covered. I talked about my experience with equipment, and figuring out how to make a professional sounding show without trying to spend a lot of money. But if you know how to navigate the equipment, then how to even put that together. But the whole point is to have a good sounding show and know how to work whatever equipment you have, whether it's a recorder or a microphone, a mixer, or what have you. Knowing how to work that, because you want to have a good professional sounding show so that people want to come back and listen. And I know all about that. I've had my experience with poor sound quality, and trust me, it is not a great thing after you've spent hours preparing and interviewing or talking, and then you get a show that is poorly recorded. It is devastating, so if you're starting out in podcasting, learning how to navigate that equipment is going to be so important. But don't waste a lot of time doing it. There are easy ways to do it now compared to when I first started. So definitely take her notes on the sound quality. Secondly, she talked about marketing. So important, because podcasting is popular, but there are a lot of people in the industry now compared to when it was. I mean, everybody in there, look, as they used to say back in the day, everybody and their mama got a podcast show now, which is good, but it makes the competition so much greater. So you have to know how to navigate and what works for your show. Like she said, some people do Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Other people don't. Other people might just market it straight to their client base, you know what I mean? In email marketing, you might not even use social. Some people may do it YouTube versions, so many ways, so many avenues to do it, but knowing what works best for you, i.e. you and your audience, because not just you, because you might just want to promote it on social, but your audience might not be on social. They might be on Reddit, or they might be on the blog, or they might be looking on YouTube. So you have to be conscious of where your audience is consuming it at. So that's going to be necessary to know. But marketing is a very, very, very key point, because there are so many shows. You have to know how to get your show in front of the right people, and in front of the people that want to see the content that you're creating. So that's such a good topic. So listen, she had so much to offer. Definitely check her out, and be sure to get that offer. I'm telling you, the offbeatlife.com/build on beauty. She put that package together just for our audience, and I'm so grateful for you doing that, Debbie. Thank you so much. Listen, last on the list, we have a young lady who I am is just my sister girl, if you want to call it that. I just love the work that she does in the marketplace. I love the energy that she brings. She's been on the show many times. She's been on with here recently, Purpose is Not Postponed. She was on prior to that with our episode Redefining Wealth, and then she was on before that with our episode Money Matters. She is a financial expert. That's her craft. That's where she starts. But she's also a life coach, business coach. She's a speaker, author. She has a new book coming out real soon, and her brand is Redefining Wealth. Her name is Patrice Washington. Chase Purpose, Not Money is her tagline, which I love. Listen, I called Patrice up and contacted her, and she joined me on the show, and we had a great time. And this is what she had to say as it pertains to what I wish I knew before starting a podcast. Patrice Washington.
What's one thing I wish I had known before starting? Well, I only had 3 weeks to start mine, so there's one thing I wish I knew is that there's no need to like anyone else. Like, podcasting is one of those platforms where you literally can just do your own thing, build your own voice, and as long as you're consistent, you'll find your tribe, right? Your tribe will find you. I think it's really different than a lot of other mediums where people tend to compete, right? And there's this sense in a lot of other mediums that if I put you on, now my people going to leave me. They're not, they just listen to you. And podcasting is one of those spaces where podcasters are so giving. We always are inviting each other on stuff, and there's no fear of competition. It's just like a really great space to be yourself and be okay with being yourself, not trying to be anyone else. So I don't know. I mean, even though I launched in only 3 weeks, I was really thoughtful about it. You know, like I really did. I put everything else to the side for those 3 weeks and went all in on what I wanted to talk about and what I wanted it to feel like. And I think if I had a word of advice from new podcasters, it would be that this is not something you jump into to try to make no money overnight. That's not it. Right? This is a lot of work and dedication and commitment. And I see people like, oh, I'm going to launch a podcast and then just do. I'm like, you better launch a podcast because you're really passionate about sharing your thoughts. Because you have to be consistent in order for it to win. It's not going to win when you do it every now and then, you know. So, and it's not about making money overnight. My very first thing was to create quality content consistently. And that was my goal for the first year. As long as I can create quality content consistently for a year, eventually it'll pay off, and it has.
So good, Patrice, creating quality content consistently. That's the key word. That's the operative word. For a year is such a good goal. And if I had to leave you with a charge as a new podcaster, that would be my charge to you. Create quality content consistently for 1 year. I guarantee you, if you do that, whether your show is a 1 week show, everyday show, believe it or not, there are some podcasters who do daily shows. And when I say daily, I mean 30 days. If there's 30 days in a month, 30 days they do a new episode, which is kudos to them. I don't know how they do it, but they make it happen. But creating quality content consistently for a year is a good charge for any new podcaster. Once you get past all the stuff we've talked about here, which is what Ben said about sitting down, finding your place of purpose within the podcast. That's so important. Before you even start to develop an episode or develop a show, what's your place? What's your purpose? What do you want to do? What do you want? How do you want to lend your voice to the market? Then you go, like Debbie said, you start trying to develop your skill set with the equipment and find out what format you want to market your show into, and of course, you know, be consistent with the content of the episodes. You know, put the opposite quality content out there consistently, and just let the universe do what it does with what it is that you create. And trust me, it will do something amazing for you. I just, if you have, no matter how you want to lend your voice to the marketplace, you know, there are some people who have shows about, you can create a show, anything that you can think of. You can create a show on anything that you can think of it. You can create a show around it. Trust me, there is an audience that wants to hear what you have to say on that topic, or what you have to lend to that industry. So nothing is too extreme, nothing is too off the wall. All I would say is be consistent, not only consistent, but with your episodes, but be consistent with who you are. You know, sometimes in these spaces, especially in entertainment, you know, we can tend to try to please the people and do what's popular in order to get profit, you know, but that's not necessary in the podcast space. It's not necessary in any space, but definitely in a podcast space, it's not necessary, because your audience, your listeners will be able to sniff out a fraud very quickly. You know, if you're on your podcast trying to be something or that you're not, and pretending and make believe to your audience, they're going to sniff you out in the first 30 seconds, and by your next episode you will not have many listeners, because it's just something about the podcast audience. They know what is authentic. They can identify genuine, authentic personalities, and so if it's not true to you, it's gonna come across very, very loud. You know, I just think of myself, and when I first started, you know, I was creating consistent episodes, and I wanted to just try some different things. So I tried this type of format where it was more kind of celebrity hot topics driven, and I said, well, I want to put a spin on it. I knew, being in radio and main market radio, that hot topics are tend to get listeners. People want to hear commentary on hot topics. You know what I mean? And I said, well, since this is something that people want to hear, how about I take it and put my spin on it, and do my thing, thinking, it would work, so I did it and spent hours creating this episode, and I just wanted to try it out. I wasn't fully married to the idea, but I wanted to try it and see how it worked, and before it could even go to market, I and this is something I suggest you have in your network. I have a sounding board, of a couple of people that I let listen to things, that I'm going to release or things that I'm going to put out, just to get their commentary. And these people are people who not only understand what it is that the work that I do, and they understand the purpose and the vision of the work that I do, but they understand me as an individual. They know me, and they have my best interests, So these sounding boards, they sometimes sound off, and I have to be open and available to hear what they have to say. So this particular episode was ready to go. It was sounding good. And I was like, okay, this could work. You never know. This might be another little lane I could, whatever, and one of my sounding boards listened to it. And I was like, well, so what do you think? And she was like, And that little pause in her voice just let me know that something wasn't right, So I wanted to dig in and hear her thoughts. I said, well, because in this space, you have to be open to criticism, and I'm one who's very open to constructive criticism, So I was like, well, what is it, So she was like, well, it's just not. It don't seem. It's not you, She couldn't put her finger on it. She said it's cool, She said, but it's just not you, And that let me know, this is not something I need to pursue fully. You know what I mean? This is a good idea, and it may work for someone else's brand, but for me, it's not a right fit. And I respected her opinion in that. And that's something that you have to do when you get your sounding board and they sound off, because you have to give them permission to do so. And when they do it, you have to be open to hearing it, and she sounded off on that episode. And as badly, as badly as I wanted to put it out in the market and just see what the marketplace thought, what the industry thought, what the listeners thought about it, I didn't. And I didn't because I said, well, if she is thinking this, somebody that I trust to give me and I respect to give me an opinion, if she's thinking this, even if there are just 100 listeners out of 1,000 that think that, that's 100 listeners that I could possibly turn off. That's 100 listeners that I could possibly lose because they don't necessarily vibe with it. It's not true to the theme of the show, but it's not true to me and my authentic self, So I didn't do it, and I'm so glad I didn't, because it allowed me to be consistent with what I was already doing, and that is what has grown the show to what it is today. So that's what I would suggest to you as you navigate this thing, podcasting. Start to dig deep and evaluate who you are and reevaluate if you're one who's in tune and with yourself, and start to just think about what's real and honest and true and authentic for you as an individual. Then start to create the brand. Then start to create the thing that it is that will eventually become your show. Start off as an individual, and I'm so glad that my sounding board sounded off on that, because to be honest, is I sit in the chair on mainstream radio, and yeah, I do weigh in on topics, and yes, I have an opinion on topics. However, if you get in the back of my head, you would really realize I care really less. I could care less about celebrity driven topics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not interesting to me, you know what I mean? So it's not something that I would want to be at the forefront of my brand, you know what I mean? And maybe that's what came out when she listened to the show. I don't know, but all she had to say was, it's just not you. And that was enough for me to say, okay, I'm not going to do it. So don't be afraid to try things, but have that sounding board, even if it's just one or two people that you trust to give you a valuable opinion about what it is that you're putting out on your podcast. But whatever you're creating, once you create it consistently, make sure it's quality and put it out there and let God do what he does with it. You know, I think in the way of the episode and the question that has been posed, what I wish I knew before starting a podcast. I wish I knew how wonderful and beautiful and rewarding, and I'm not just talking about financial gain. I'm talking about inner gain and inner peace and just inner value that it has brought. I wish I knew how valuable this thing was and how much worth it would give me in the space of media, in the space of the marketplace. If I had known that, we would probably be celebrating my 10th year as a podcast host. We would probably be celebrating the Build on Beauty podcast's 10th anniversary, because I would have started a long time ago. It's a rewarding work. You know, it's a labor, but it's a labor of love. And I salute you on your interest in even being a part of this space. You know, I salute you on your interest in trying to lend your voice to something, a cause, or whatever it is that you're trying to speak about. I salute you on that. And I think we need more of you in the world, you know, more of you in the world, sounding off on issues that matter to you. It's a very important place to be. You know, it's a podcast is your way of contributing to the community or culture that you are called to serve. And I salute you in that effort. And I hope this episode has given you some good tips and good wisdom on how to start, where to start, what to do, how to navigate this journey of podcasting. Listen, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a part of this brand for 5 years. And thank you for your continued support as we grow into 5 and many more years to come. As always, this is the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. I'm your host, Cornell Jermaine. Until next time, let your soul be made whole. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Build on Beauty podcast. For more information about our host, please visit CornellJermaine.com.